In a speech today in Washington, Chinese President Hu Jintao insisted that China will not pose a military threat in the future and is not engaged in an arms race. For the reaction on Capitol Hill, let's bring in Republican Representative Randy Forbes, chair of the Readiness Subcommittee in the House Armed Services Committee and chairman of the Congressional China Caucus. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you, Rhonda. Great to be with you.
I'd love to get your reaction just to those comments that President Hu made earlier today.
Rhonda, first of all, we've got to see what the world just witnessed in the last 24 hours. They witnessed the leadership of the greatest democracy in the world, bringing the president of the largest communist nation in the world over here, rolling out the red carpet and lifting a toast to him. And what were we toasting? We were toasting the fact that we've given them our technology so they could build up their weapon systems, their space program, and their business models. And what do we get in return for it? We got children's toys, we got pet food, and we got tainted drywall. We toasted them also today. We saw for the fact that we've given them our cash, and we basically put an anchor of indebtedness around our children and our grandchildren for decades to come. But finally, Rhonda, what we've done is toasted them for the fact that we had a $252 billion deficit last year. They had a $252 billion surplus. Rhonda, that was 4 times the military expenditures that China had last year. That should be a big concern for Americans. I'm not disappointed with the Chinese. I'm disappointed with our leadership.
Well, let's focus directly on the military. How serious of a threat does China's military pose to the U.S. and its allies? What was your reaction to the images of the J-20 stealth fighter that we saw not long ago?
Well, one of the big concerns, as you know, we saw not only the picture of the J-20, but Secretary Gates had just come to Congress last year and told us that they would not have that plane operational until 2020, and now we get photographs of it, not only flying, but flying when the Secretary actually goes to visit China. That's a concern for us when at the same time, as you know, the rival plane we have is the F-22. We've not only canceled production of the F-22, but very soon we'll be destroying the production lines for the F-22, which is the only plane capable of competing with what we think the J-20 could do. In addition to that, Rhonda, though, they also have announced within the last several weeks their new missile capable of attacking our carrier. We don't know if we can defend against that. And then the same overlay, while we're cutting $100 billion out of our defense budget, we find that the Chinese have announced they're going to have a double-digit increase in their defense expenditures. At the same time, they've increased expenditures for their military by 339% over the last 10 years. That's a little bit concerning to all of us who look at readiness for our military.
Should we be increasing the Pentagon's budget, and how do you balance that potential interest with the fact that deficit reduction is very much front and center these days?
I think, Rhonda, that there's no question we need to look at our expenditures, but one of the things we shouldn't be doing is allowing our defense expenditures to be driven by our social budgets as opposed to our defense needs. What we've been telling the Department of Defense is that we need to do 2 things first. We need to carefully assess what the threats are around the world and what we need to defend and protect the United States of America. Then we need to look at how we can do that the most efficient way possible. What we shouldn't do is go in there with preconceived cuts and say we're just going to make these whether we're cutting major programs or not. The second thing we need to do, Rhonda, is be very, very cognizant that we're watching what the Chinese are doing and making sure we're prepared for that should a conflict occur 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road.
Well, what's the likelihood of that in your view?
I think one of the things that we find is that as long as we continue to maintain our strength and the Chinese don't overestimate their strength or underestimate our strength, I think we have a much better chance of that not taking place. But what we've already seen is we create power vacuums with a weakness from the United States. We see that having a major concern with the Chinese, that they start becoming more and more bold in their efforts, both diplomatically and also militarily. And I think the first initial impact we're going to find is not with a direct conflict between us and the Chinese, but with how it impacts all of our allies in that region, who begin to ask if we're going to have the economic strength and the military strength and the political will to stand in there should they need us if something were to happen and a conflict were to take place.
Congressman, thanks very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Representative Randy Forbes is chairman of the Readiness Subcommittee in the House Armed Services Committee and chair of the Congressional China Caucus. I'm Rhonda Schaffler. This is Reuters.